Welcome to Gadget First. Today we'll be reviewing the new Motorola Milestone XT720. It's the successor to the original Milestone, otherwise known as the Droid. There are some notable features with this phone. Firstly, it's got an 8 megapixel camera, which is very high for a mobile phone, and also a xenon flash, which is very bright. Also, a unique feature is the HDMI port. This allows output of photo and video to your TV. Let's look at the external features of the XT720. Firstly, there's a 3.7-inch capacitive TFT screen. There's 3 sensors here, including an ambient light sensor and a proximity sensor. On the top, we have a 3.5mm jack and the lock button. On the back, we have an 8 megapixel camera we've already talked about, the xenon flash, and the speaker. On this side, we have the volume rocker and a dedicated camera key, as well as a button for changing the camera's mode. And on this side, we have a micro USB port. We're disappointed with Motorola's home screen effort. You get the standard Android lock screen, and then you get an almost standard home screen, the only difference being the green and the blue buttons at the bottom, although it seems quite laggy when we use it, especially the app menu. When scrolling down, it seems to be quite choppy. We don't know why Motorola have left out Moto Blur. Maybe it's because the XT720 is more of a serious phone, but we thought that Moto Blur would be a good addition. The XT720 speaker is actually very loud, and you can hear it in most situations, for example traffic. On the whole, call quality on the XT720 is very good. Now, on to the specifications. The screen is 3.7 inch and it's a WVGA resolution, which is 480 pixels by 854. The processor is nothing too special really, just 550 MHz, but it does its job quite well considering it's also got a graphics processor. The graphics processor, combined with the CPU, makes it quite a good gaming platform. Now we're going to look at the XT720's performance at gaming. We're going to be running Raging Thunder 2 Lite, which is arguably one of the best graphics on the platform. So, if I load up Raging Thunder, as you can see, thanks to the graphics processor inside of this phone, the action is quite smooth. There are some noticeable slowdowns every now and then, but on the whole, this runs at a perfectly reasonable frame rate. Also, the XT720 is a quad-band phone, so it should work in most places across the world. The phone has 256 MB of RAM and a disappointing 150 MB of internal storage. The phone runs Android 2.1 and therefore it's impossible to install apps to the SD card. This makes 150 MB quite useless, as you can only install a few apps. The XT720 also has a proximity sensor. This is useful for when you're in a phone call and you put your ear towards the phone and the screen automatically switches off. so you don't tap the screen or end the call if you don't want to. We've already mentioned the 8 megapixel camera. There are separate videos. You can find the one for photos here and for videos here. Overall, the tech specs of this phone are a bit disappointing. We'd like to see a 1 GHz processor, as this is quite standard nowadays for high-end Android mobiles, and also more internal memory, as this phone doesn't support Froyo, the latest Android version yet, and so you can't install apps to the SD card. We've already mentioned that Motorola haven't really changed much with the Android platform, although they have added a free trial of their MotoNav software. It's a turn-by-turn navigation app, and unlike Google Navigation, the maps are built into the phone, so you don't use your internet allowance when you're using it. This is particularly useful if you don't have an unlimited internet allowance, or if you're in a place that doesn't have that good or fast internet. You can also see buildings in 3D, which is a nice eye candy feature, although the user interface of MotoNav does look a bit cheap. The phone is very easy to use as it adopts the Android platform. For example, to get all my apps, I just tap the app drawer and then all my apps are stored here. Although we found that when we're playing games or apps that run in landscape, it's quite easy to tap these buttons, as they're capacitive and can be pressed very easily just by hovering your finger over them. The camera app on the XT720 is very easy to use. As you see, here I have my camera app loaded, and I can change what the camera is going to focus on by dragging this box around. It will then focus where I choose. And if you don't feel like using that, you can use standard autofocus. Also, I can change settings by clicking the menu button, going into settings, and then I can change face detection, where you can tag faces, image stabilization, which takes out the shakiness of images, the ISO, which is how quick the shutter is, the picture resolution, for example 8 megapixel, 5 megapixel, 2 megapixel, the panorama resolution, and also the video resolution, and the review time. There's also a number of scenes that I can use based on the light or movement of the picture. Also, which I have here, will automatically change the camera settings according to light and movement, portrait, landscape. Sport is useful for taking pictures of movement, night, sunset. Macro is useful for taking close-up pictures, and back to auto again. I can also change the flash to be on, off, or on auto. I can change the brightness of the photo, and here I can change the camera mode from camera to camcorder, a timer, and there's also panoramic, self-portrait and multi-shot. Finally, you can click view, which goes to the gallery, so you can see pictures that you've already taken. Our favourite function with the camera is the auto panoramic function. If I go onto the panoramic function, I take a picture and then I move my camera in any direction and it automatically takes a picture when it gets to a certain point. This seems to be very clever and useful. Although this phone is being marketed primarily as a camera phone due to its 8 megapixel camera, we think it could be improved lots. Although the flash here is very good, it can light up the darkest of subjects. Without using the flash, it's very bad. You get dark lines going down the camera in dark conditions. And you can't use the flash during video because it's a xenon flash and it can't sustain for very long. And also the video is very choppy as it's limited to only 24 frames per second, and the processor doesn't help much with this either. we think video is very disappointing on this phone, both in quality and frame rate. Overall, we're quite disappointed with this phone. It's marketed between the mid and the high range, however it doesn't pack the punch to be a high range phone. The processor is only 550 MHz. This is relatively slow compared to the 1 GHz processor found in the HTC Desire and Samsung Galaxy S. Also, the camera is a big letdown. Although taking photos with this phone isn't too bad, taking video is just diabolical. So let's look at the scores for the XT720. Design, we'd give 7 out of 10, as although it looks nice and feels great in the hand, the buttons at the bottom are capacitive and they are very easy to accidentally touch if you're holding it landscape. Also, usability, we'd give 8 out of 10, as it runs Android, which is very easy to master. Camera, we'd give 5 out of 10, as although photos can look fine, video is diabolical really. Battery life is slightly worse than the average smartphone battery. Normal usage it will last about a day and a half, and excessive usage it might last about half a day, which is a bit silly really. Overall, we'd give this phone 6 out of 10. So the phone can definitely be improved in many ways. It's certainly not as polished as a lot of other Android phones. And the price of it, it's retailing at about £350 in the UK, which we think is a bit excessive for the features on this phone, and therefore we wouldn't recommend it. Thanks for watching Gadget First. Next time we'll be looking at the flip out.